Black Out Loud Media Group. Welcome back to another episode of the Brown Sugar Cafe podcast, the place where poetry meets conversation. I'm your host, Terrence P. Elmore, and before we get into today's topic, make sure you hit that plus sign so you don't miss an episode. Also, please subscribe to my blog, thebrownssugarcafe.blog, and if you find any value in this episode or any other episodes, make sure you leave a heartfelt review. So with that being said, let's get to it. Welcome back, everybody. Have another special guest, J Dwayne of Love is a Parable. Thank you for coming on, brother.
Thank you for having me.
I wanted to have you on because of Love is a Parable. I always get this confused. Is it a non-profit or not-for-profit? What's the difference?
It's a non-profit. I mean, technically, they're used interchangeably for the most part, but it's a non-profit 501c3 organization.
Okay. Love is a Parable. What is it and where did you get the idea?
Now, that's a loaded question. I don't think I get that one enough. But Love is a Parable, like we were talking, is a charitable 501c3 educational nonprofit where we focus on value-based education. What we do is our mission is dedicated basically to bringing people together through love, which is a methodology and approach that we've created by providing value-based education, inciting storytelling, and also promoting personal acceptance. So it's kind of like the chicken and the egg. Which one happened first? It's hard for us to tell that. Was it the vision? Was it the mission? But we knew for the most part that there was a need and people needed a way of coming together. And a lot of the things that were out there just wasn't working. It seemed like we were becoming more divisive by the day.
Right.
And so values is one of those things that we all have. So you're not going to get into an argument with somebody who will tell you, I don't have any values. No, everybody has values. And when we start having conversations about values, it's almost the equivalent of food. You'll be surprised how it brings people together.
Just thinking about what you said, everybody does have values. We all don't share values, but everyone has some sort of value, even if they don't think about it directly. But there are certain things that people will and won't do. And when you have that conversation, like you said, it's like food. Food is universal. I mean, who doesn't like to eat?
Right.
Some people try to say they don't like to eat and try to say, well, I only eat to survive or whatever. But 9 times out of 10, you're going to try to find something that has some sort of taste to it.
Correct.
And we all can, like breaking bread. A lot of good conversations are had over a meal.
Yeah, and I'll say to that point is we are conditioned. Everyone is conditioned to a certain extent to achieve success. And I remember I experienced burnout right before I started Love is a Parable because I was at a place, I was an exec in higher education. I was doing what everyone said, oh, this is great. You have that secured position with that secured money. Mm-hmm. But I was so unfulfilled and I was so unhappy. And after experiencing burnout, I stepped away and I realized I was doing everything that was expected of me, but I wasn't doing what I was purposed to do. So Love is a Parable is also a product of all the things that I could not do in higher ed and all the things that I could not do when I was working in healthcare that I knew would work. So I basically applied those methodologies and approaches and I said, okay, I know that this can bring people together. I know that this can help and I know that they can achieve positive outcomes if we do this. So it was really more of, it came out of a necessity for me to live, but also to achieve some level of purpose.
I've been having conversations, seems like the last couple of years with people, and they've been in positions where they're not really feeling a purpose. They're doing the work, they're getting the accolades, they're getting everybody saying, like you said, great job. Oh, you have that great position or whatever, but they're not feeling that sense of purpose and that fulfillment. I'm really glad you were able to recognize that and to turn it into something that can also help people, because at the end of the day, especially education, it's the root of it is helping, right? And if you're not feeling fulfilled in that, it's only but for so long that trickles off into your work and people can recognize it.
Yeah, and I realize that sometimes we put either disqualified or unqualified people in certain positions of authority in our lives. And what I mean by that is I can respect you in one capacity, but that doesn't mean I respect you in another. But for some strange reason, our loyalty to individuals will give them jurisdiction in areas that they shouldn't have. So you have some people who are out there teaching that your purpose changes. Your purpose doesn't change. Your means to fulfill your purpose may change, but your purpose does not change. So you have these split ideologies that are causing people to, in short, lose their mind, because it's like, well, I know I'm called to do this, or I'm purposed to do this, or I'm positioned to do this, but I'm also being told that I'm purposed to do that. See, only you know your purpose.
Right.
It's that thing that gnaws at you. It's that thing that completes you when you're doing it. It's like it rejuvenates itself every time that you do it. Even when you don't feel like doing it, you get something from it. This is not something somebody can help tell you that it's there, but they can help you birth it. But they can't tell you, no, I think your purpose is this. No, that purpose is something that you got to do some self-work on. And that's the thing. We have relied on so many people to do the work when it comes to our purpose. We don't know how to excavate our own heart. We don't know how to excavate our own soul. That's also why we don't know how to excavate the true meaning and the purpose of who we are, which is love.
One of the things that I don't like, and I've seen this in different capacities, different organizations, whatever, what have you, is whenever you get a group of people together and who's ever facilitating the meeting or what have you says, they ask everybody what their strong points are, right? And everybody goes around the room and pretty much says what they think their strong points are, right? But in that, I feel like you're pigeonholing yourself to something, and you may not know yet. You may not know your purpose yet, but you're thinking, having a conversation with somebody, like you said before, that told you this is what you're supposed to do, this is your purpose, right? But you're telling people this is your strong point without actually being able to do the self-work and to find out, okay, is this really my purpose? So now you have a room full of people who maybe half or even all of them have been told that they're good at this is what they're supposed to do, and they're still holding on to that. I always like those situations where you have a conversation with people, and by getting to know them, you can see something in them and help pull it out. Not force them to be somebody you think they're supposed to be, but be able to recognize, okay, you think you're a chef, but I see, so much more in you than that. I love what you said there, because I never really thought about your means to achieving the purpose changing instead of your actual purpose changing. It's like it all comes back down to that same thing. Let's say entertainment. Like if somebody is an entertainer and they might be a singer one day, next thing you know, they're an actor, next thing you know, they're a director. It's still some form of entertainment there. It's just they changed their position in it, but the purpose didn't change. You went from being a singer to an actor and now a director, maybe even a producer.
Yeah. And we have to address the fact that some people, you don't necessarily have to like your purpose. I think that's the other thing. Like a lot of people feel like, oh, it's going to make me happy. No, your purpose may not necessarily be something that make you happy, but it can bring fulfillment. And I want to separate that, because a lot of times we may feel like we're better qualified in another position than what our purpose has called us to be. Like, I know you from college. You used to model. You could have easily said, no, my purpose is to model and do fashion. You get what I'm saying? And so you could be like, I don't want to write books.
I didn't model officially, but yeah, I guess you.
Oh, you modeled. Now, you want no Forbes magazine or nothing like that, but you did model. And that's another example. Like, people saw you, they like, I like your frame, I like this, I like the way you dress, I like all of those things. So you could have easily went into that avenue.
That's true, yeah.
Of fashion, but you didn't. Look how your purpose revealed itself later on. And I remember when we reconnected and we had that whole conversation about ministry and poetry and writing and all of that. That came later on in life. That didn't happen when we were 18, 19 years old.
Oh no, huh? Yeah.
So just imagine that if somebody would have told you like, hey, if you would have pursued the fashion industry, there could have been a great chance that you could have missed the life you have now. And you could have been doing all of those things where everybody else was happy with what you were doing as a product, but you were missing your fulfillment. It could have been a life without Nikki. Could you imagine that? You see what I'm saying? Those type of things could have been in place, and a lot of people don't understand that. My purpose was connected to all my insecurities and all my minor gifts.
Yeah, I've been noticing that with a lot of things. I think it's because those things, well, it's not even a think, it's because those things are so important to our purpose. If we could shy away from that or be insecure in that, then we'll never fulfill our purpose. And it keeps us from fulfilling our purpose. Sometimes if you don't recognize, it's like just get out of that comfort zone. You have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable a lot of times to push you into your purpose. Like with me and writing and poetry and stuff, like I've always been writing, never really talked about it. I don't know, it wasn't even a specific reason. It was just one of those things I never really mentioned. But when I decided later to go ahead and create a book, put it out there, it was all this shock. Everybody was like, oh man, you wrote poems, you didn't even tell me that. I'm just like, I mean, just never mentioned it. And it wasn't because of, anything I was trying to hide or anything like it. Just never came up. I was talking to one of my cousins and he was like, man, he's like, because you're a humble dude. That's why. He's like, you don't, go around bragging about stuff. So of course you're not going to be the person to be like, hey, check this out. Hey, do this, I'm like, yeah, I guess you have a point, but writing about love, like I never thought that I would have a poetry book, 2 poetry books dedicated to love, because that really wasn't the stuff I was writing about. I mean, of course you have your love poems here and there or whatever, but I wanted to do my part to spread some love and to show people other things, because watching reality TV and things like that on social media, it just seems like everybody's mad at each other and love doesn't exist. And then even having conversation with people who believe that love hurts and that sort of thing. And it's always interesting how whenever I talk to somebody and we have the conversation about love hurting, they always mention the person every single time. And I'm just like, but that's not love. That's a person. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, say you get hit by a drunk driver, right? You don't say that the car hit you. The person operating the car hit you. So the person mishandled the car, just like whoever hurt you, they mishandled love. So I saw that and I was like, okay, I need to share these poems and give people some kind of hope, give some people some type of a better insight in love, because I just saw negative stuff, but I never thought I'd be here doing that. I kind of feel like if somebody did mention it to me, I still would have been open to it, but I wouldn't have moved as swiftly.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack with what you were saying. So we have with Love is a Parable something that is called the sacred box theory. Okay, the sacred box theory is an expansion of the self-congruity theory that's already in place by Dr. Sergey. I haven't got the pronunciation of his name. When we came into this world, our first 2 years are pretty much the same. Everyone, if you're a parent, you definitely can attest to this, but the first 2 years of a child's life is inundated with no. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, no. The list goes on and on.
Right.
And parents or the village is doing this as an attempt to keep the child safe and to provide some level of protection for that child. However, they're also teaching the child to not trust their instinct, to not trust their voice. So 18 years of this type of indoctrination only prepares a person to tuck away their true instincts, to tuck away their true feelings, to tuck away their true emotions, to tuck away their values. So for many of us, we have been conditioned to protect our values, and the focus shifts to just the protection of the values versus what our values truly are. This is very important because our values shape our concept of who we are. Our values shape who we are, and that self-concept is based on two determining factors: my ideal self and my organic self, or my self-image. So who I am organically is my self-image. How the world sees me is the ideal self. If there is a conflict between the ideal self and my self-image, it affects my self-esteem. Out of our self-esteem is where our expectations are formed, or some people like to label them as standards, but really they're just scenarios that we've created to protect our values. So the higher the self-esteem, the lower the expectations are. The lower the self-esteem, the higher the expectations, or the higher these standards are. And it's just a framework of things that we've created to protect our values. Most of us are conditioned to protect. Most of us are conditioned to respond, but few of us have been really conditioned to kind of pinpoint what those values truly are and where they come from. So when we start talking about, like, for instance, I'm a humble dude, right? Like, that's an example.
What he said. Yeah.
I mean, but that's an example.
Yeah.
Like, when we talk about humility, that is a noble thing. And it's great to have some level of humility. But I do know for a fact, even speaking on me, I wanted to do something in music theater. I wanted to act. I wanted to sing. I wanted to do those things. I was most insecure about my writing, not because I couldn't write, but it was an undeveloped skill. And now majority of the things that I do are centered around writing. Like you, I am a poet as well.
Oh yeah.
I put my first book out. It is horrible as far as mechanics and structure. That book was horrible. Even when I look at it, I laugh at it.
I enjoyed it, man.
The content is good.
Yeah.
But that structure is trash. But one of the things that when I got better, you got to think about it. I did that thing when I was like 30. But when I got better with structure and content, which is a working thing, I was going to change it and reformat it, but I wanted to leave it out there to show people that, just put it out there. Yeah. It'll gravitate to whoever it is supposed to gravitate to. But a lot of us have bridled ourselves based on a perception of who we are expected to be versus doing it anyway. I'm a huge Lauryn Hill fan, and I remember when she came out with her Unplugged album, and everyone was talking about how trash it was, and that was really my favorite album because from a lyrical standpoint, it was just like off the charts. It murdered the miseducation of Lauryn Hill just from the lyrical context perspective, but also her conversation about how we become slaves to our talent. And how she had all of this success from a worldly standpoint, but she didn't have any personal success because she became a slave to her gift. She couldn't play with her kids because mommy couldn't talk, or she couldn't drink or enjoy certain things in life because she had to keep the voice at the best place. So it was really restricting her, but it was supposed to be giving her a life. She decided to no longer be a slave to that. And that was pivotal in my life because it helped me get to a place where I said, I'm not going to be a slave to this. I'll be a conduit.
I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that album again because when I listened to it, I liked it, but I never really focused on the lyrics.
Bro, I love
I'm gonna have to take another dive.
I love that album, and I was like, when people don't understand when they say she didn't give out another album, I'm like, y'all don't even appreciate that gem yet because it's so much that she's talking about that you're gonna have to just sit there and marinate with that thing.
And then too, when it came out, like, look at all the other stuff that was out. Like certain albums and things that come out that are on a deeper level, especially from some of our favorite artists, people don't want to hear that.
Right.
Like people who love Kendrick Lamar, some people weren't feeling that To Pimp a Butterfly album when it came out, and a lot of people I had conversations with that didn't like it, they listened to it later and it was like, wow, well maybe we didn't give it a chance.
Exactly.
Because it wasn't the same as Good Kid, Mad City, so it was like, what is this?
Right. Well, people don't realize how influenced they are by other elements. And one of the things is, going back to what you were talking about, the concept of love. we have been so conditioned to seek, like, matter of fact, we talked about this on the show. We have been so conditioned to seek external love. We don't know that at the core of who we are is love.
That's good. Yeah.
We constantly think about the familiar 4 levels of love from the Greek philosophers, right? Phileo, storge, agape, and eros. Yeah, that was the other.
Okay.
The 4: phileo, storge, eros, and agape. Agape, we were taught, was the unconditional. Especially if you was born and raised in the church, it was labeled as the unconditional love, and then in the church it was labeled as the unconditional love that God has for his people that we would never possess. Then you have the eros, which is the romantic type of love. Mm-hmm. Then we got the storge, which is the family type of love, and then philea, which is the love that one would have for like a friend or something like that. But none of these loves clearly define what a person will have for themselves. So how can I respond to something that I've never met? And so we have people to say things like, oh, you got to love yourself first before you love anybody else. But the world isn't conditioned in a way for you to love yourself first. It won't even let you recognize that you are loved. So it's not that you love yourself first. Loving yourself is loving everyone else. You can't give what you don't have. And a person who don't love themselves is not a joy to be around.
Yeah, that's true. We talked about that. I think, that was that time you had me and Nikki on. We had that conversation about self-love.
Right.
And that was, we stayed on that piece there a good while.
Yeah. Well, because it is a struggle, because certain things will make sense from a practical standpoint, but when you start to really think about it from a more logical standpoint, or even a spiritual lens, it takes a different meaning. I'll give you an example. Like, people will say, I can do bad all by myself. The concept of I can do bad all by myself is, if I'm going to do bad, I can do that by myself. I don't need to get with somebody, and that just makes it twice as bad. That makes it worse. You get what I mean?
Right. Mm-hmm.
But the logical standpoint is, why would you want to do bad, period?
That's true.
Things are too good to be true. So if you are a good person, are you true? This is why people are skeptical of good people in their lives. It's like, what is your motive? What is this? What is that? Because they have been saying to themselves, it's too good to be true. And we don't realize how these things play out. And so the idea or the concept of self-love makes a lot of sense. But also, self-love is universal love. You don't love yourself, then love everybody else. Loving yourself is loving everybody else.
That's deep. Say that one more time, man.
You don't love yourself, then love everybody else. Loving yourself is loving everybody else. The concept of self-love is corporate love.
Wow. Love is a parable. I've been noticing is in the DEI space, right? Mm-hmm. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. How does an organization, an entity like Love is a Parable fit into the DEI space, to someone who may be hearing this thinking, well, what does that have to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion?
That's a great question, and I answer both of them together. Everything that Love is a Parable does, every service that we provide, is value-based education. What we help people to understand is that this is kind of a universal concept that can be applied to multiple ways of thought, if you will. So how it helps when we look at DEI is that we have a conversation about values. Most people try to have a conversation about race, for instance. Race equity is a part of the DEI conversation, but it's not all. There are so many different elements that fall into a conversation about belonging. But if you don't check your values, you're not going to be in a position to even have a conversation about anybody belonging. Yes, there are some things that are just racist, but then there are some people who just disregard race, meaning they don't really care. They don't care one way or another. The same thing when it comes to so many different other things. Like, there are certain things people just don't care about because it's not of value to them. It's not of importance to them. So we can mislabel some things, but if we don't take time to really process those values, we don't realize that I can have a conversation about somebody's values before I can make an erroneous assessment about them and their motives. Because values shape the way we see ourselves, others, and the decisions that we make. So if I'm thinking about I could have said, I'm coming on this podcast just to promote Love is a Parable, right?
Right.
If I'm coming on here just to promote Love is a Parable, I may not engage into a full conversation with you because I'm only thinking about what I want out of it. But because I value you as a friend and I value you as a brother, this conversation is not just a conversation about Love is a Parable, but this is a conversation about two brothers who are successful in their own right, doing a lot of great things. And Love is a Parable just happens to be one of the conversations of discussion. But you have met people where you're talking to them and they don't hear anything that you're saying. They just keep on over talking you because they don't value you. They don't value the conversation. They only value what it is. So when I go into those conversations, I show people how those values influenced the trajectory of whatever it is we're trying to accomplish. That's the same thing in the DEI space. That's the same thing when we're talking about conflict navigation and management. A lot of people try to go quickly to the management component, but they don't know how to navigate through conflict. And so we want to show them that conflict is one thing, conflict navigation is another, and then conflict management is another part of that. So you have to know how to navigate through conflict no matter what the occasion is, so that you can develop the skills necessary to manage conflict as it arises. But if you can't navigate through that thing, it's going to always be a problem.
That's true. That's true. That's like, some people like to sweep stuff under the rug. It'll pass. And even in a space like working, okay, you have conflict or whatever, you terminate the person or the person leaves, you 9 times out of 10 are going to have that same problem again with somebody else.
Correct.
So instead of learning how to navigate and everything else, all you're doing is just ignoring it until it becomes a problem where this person's not going away, you're not going away. So now what do we do?
Exactly.
And then I've noticed in some of those situations, places have lost good people because of certain things like that, because some people just won't stand for that. They won't be in that type of environment. They'd rather find another job, go to another department, whatever. But you lose good people by it's just, at the end of the day, it's just, like you say, values. Caring about people and showing people that they matter.
Exactly. And I'll take it a step further because I do leadership development as well and leadership management skills. And one of the things that I have been working with my constituents on is the fact that it may not be a bad hire. It may not be a bad policy. It may be values being placed on that policy and values being placed on that individual. So you could have a great plan in place, but if I perceive that plan from a totally different lens because of my set of values, I can now make it seem like the policy is the problem when really it's my values.
Now, could you elaborate? Could you give us an example of that?
Okay, like I can give a good example. When I was in leadership, and this is a lot of where the theory came from. When I was in leadership, I used to manage people based off of their values. I didn't manage people based off of my values. So case in point, I am a person who doesn't need a lot of micromanaging. Okay.
Right.
I need for you to tell me exactly what is due, when it is due, and leave me alone. However, there are some people who do like a lot of hand holding. Mm-hmm. So the ones who needed hand holding, I didn't mind hand holding them throughout the process. That didn't enable them. A lot of people need reassurance of what it is that they're doing. Now, the ones who were the deadlines, what I did was I encouraged them. But what I did was created the expectations for everyone. What did success look like? I explained to them what success looked like from an organizational standpoint, but also what success would look like from a divisional standpoint of what I was held responsible of. I also let them know how to achieve these benchmarks. Okay. So with them achieving those benchmarks, they knew whether they were doing well or whether they were doing bad. So when we had conversations, I flipped it. I didn't tell them like, hey, these are your areas of improvement. It was, how do you think your performance is doing in comparison to the benchmarks we have from an organizational standpoint?
That's good.
What do you need of me to help you achieve these benchmark criteria? Okay. Once we went there, it was more of a coaching up, meaning I can provide you the skills. Now it's up to you to tell me what you need, not me to tell you what you need, because you're doing the job. So if there were times to separate, For one, I didn't call it a firing or a termination. If it was time to separate, they already knew, like, hey, this isn't working. So you'll be surprised how many times, and the former executive of HR is my friend now, and she said it never in her life she met people who thanked me for the opportunity, and it was a pleasant separation.
Yeah.
Many of the people that I have either managed, including some that I have to separate employment from, are big supporters of Love is a Parable because they knew how I did things. Now, on the flip side, somebody can come in here and say, no, we're going to run a tight ship. I need you to cockle in here. I need you to do this. I need you to do that because we got a goal to hit. Running a tight ship is not part of the policy. That's your perception of how to get people there, but that's not the policy. The policy is that these people are in charge of hitting their matrices, their KPIs, and their benchmarks as the organization deemed necessary. Now, how they get there is a managerial preference. So you can come in here with your preference of saying, no, I don't want to play no games. I want to make sure that they're doing it. Well, that's a value issue, not the policy. So don't say that's the company's policy. That's your values placed on how to get there. And so that's what you value.
Yep.
And not the people. So we show people that your values can come in and have something that is seemingly well come out looking horrible just because your values are misaligned with the overall vision of whatever that institution may be. So we have those type conversations to help them understand there is a better way or a more effective way to manage.
You reminded me of a situation that I was in. I was interviewing for a job within a company. It was a different department. And the supervisor, he was new himself. So it was him, the manager, and I think he had just got hired a couple of days before. So it was the three of us in the meeting. This guy goes into this tangent about how, like you said, the tight ship. And he's been in this department and he turned it around because pretty much he has everybody working like him. He doesn't like to have people working for him that can't get with the program. And I mean, he just went on all this stuff, and even the manager was looking at him like, what? And at that point, I stopped caring about the interview. I didn't know at that, because I'd never been in that situation before, so I didn't know if I should just excuse myself or just ride it out, because that wasn't going to work for me. We would bump heads from day one and day on, because this whole you have to work like me and do things exactly how I do because this is how it's done is crazy to me. And I mean, his passion and his fire behind it is like he really believed that's the only way. Yep. And so I didn't ask any questions. I just kind of shut down. For one, it's not going to do good for me to go back and forth with him in the interview, especially this being the company that I work for is just a different department. So this could get out or whatever. You know, they let us know if we got the position or whatever. And I actually ended up talking to the recruiter, and he was just like, how my interview went. And I told him, I was like, the way the guy came off, I knew that wasn't the area that I wanted to be in because of what he was saying and what he was doing. And I was just like, I didn't know what to do. I was like, should I have excused myself or what? And he was like, yeah, I can kind of understand it, but you still kind of want to, I guess, put your best foot forward or whatever in the interview. And I was like, for what? I was like, I wasn't interested anymore because this guy had this mentality like all of his employees had to be like him. Even if he's staying late, you need to stay late too because he's staying late. And he runs a tight ship and he's turned around departments and this is what he does. And he feels sorry for anybody who can't get with the program. And I'm just like, that's not how I roll. There are some people who would have said, okay, that's cool because they're trying to climb the corporate ladder or trying to do this and try to do that. But how unhappy would you be in a position where you know, I mean, you're getting firsthand experience of what the management is going to be like. They're giving you the expectations. So how unhappy would you be? I was like, so should I have crushed the interview and then they called me and declined it? And he was like, well, no. I was like, yeah, that's a waste of time. So like I said, after that, I had clocked out. I clocked out of the interview. I was just like, yeah, I'm just waiting for this to be over. And do you have any questions? No, don't have any questions. Thank you for your time. But I'm thankful for that experience because What if he had tried to portray himself as somebody else? And I had gotten into that area. I'll tell you, we definitely would have been bumping heads.
Yeah.
Because everybody's style of getting things done isn't exactly the same. And of course, you can show somebody a better way to do something, and you have to be open to seeing different ways to do things. But this whole do it just like me lets me know that if I have an idea, and I'm always trying to find an easier way to do things, right? Companies love that, because when you save time, you save money. So if I'm finding an easier way to do something, a faster way to do something, an effective way to do something, you're already telling me that if I come to you with it, you're just going to shut it down without even looking at it.
Right.
What do you do in a situation like that? Like if you're in an interview and it's going left, do you excuse yourself, or what do you do?
Well, that was an in-house interview, which is a little different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if an in-house interview, I would do exactly what you did, because you do have a reputation to uphold.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you wanted to really, because you had other people there, and show your leadership style, the next question could have been, well, how do you handle those who have a different work style than you? Can you give me an example of a positive outcome with someone who worked differently than you? How would you define your management style? Can you tell me how your management style is aligned to achieving the mission and vision of the organization? How do you measure success within your department? What is the cultural norm within your department? Like, it's so many different ways that you could have went with that to help. But it also was sending the message that if you say the wrong thing, I'm also smart, that I may not be interested.
Got it.
And it also can give those who work with HR, if there's a person from HR interviewing or a higher manager that's interviewing, you may be able to shine light on a situation that they may have not paid attention to on how you phrase questions. So in-house, definitely a little unique. However, external that you're interviewing for, I have walked out of interviews and I've said that, this interview is over, or this doesn't necessarily work for me.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I'm interviewing them. They're not necessarily interviewing me. Like, you're the organization, you need me. That's why you're hiring. So I need to know if your organization is a good fit for my lifestyle. And it's okay to say, I don't feel like this would be a good fit. And like you, I was actually offered a position with an organization, and just on their inability to answer certain questions, it gave me everything that I needed to know. And I told them, like, yeah, I'm a decline. And they were like, no, we thought that you were great and all of that. I said, it's not about that. I just wouldn't do well with your organization. Right. In less than 2 years of that interview, that business ended up closing. So, yeah. Trust your gut, trust your instinct. And this goes back to when you love you, love will guide you. Your inner core will guide you on what is best for you, but also best for others. So in that situation, like, not only were you protecting yourself, you actually was extending grace to that potential new manager, knowing that it would be a conflict. So nobody needs to be stressed out about this job, and we just move on. And to your point, this is what we teach individuals, is to be emotional and to trust your instinct. So many times we cut off our emotions if we feel something. And I'm not saying to act on your emotions, that's different. But to be emotional, feel your emotions and find the root of what they are. Trust your instinct. If your instinct is telling you something, it's there for a reason. Your emotions are nothing more than signals. Now, what they're signaling is up to you, but it's very important to trust your instinct and listen to your emotions and follow them. Follow them through, because they will point you to the resolve that you need.
Wow. Yeah, man, we've covered a lot, but anything you can apply this conversation to anything, especially dealing with people, talking to people, having interactions with people. I've talked about this before on the show, how I just don't think we properly communicate enough with one another. And if we actually did, a lot of conflicts, a lot of situations could be avoided if we properly communicate. Some people think communicating is, hey, I told you this, you heard me, we just communicated. But it's like, to me, proper communication is where both or all parties, whoever is involved, walk away with the understanding. we may not see eye to eye, but you understood my point and I understood yours.
Exactly.
And we don't always have to agree, but we can respect each other's views. We can respect each other's point, and we can get an understanding to see why I might have been offended by this because I thought you said it and you meant this. But now that you explained to me, this is what you really meant, I can see that now.
Exactly.
And so I don't think we have enough of those conversations. It's just like you said earlier, I just want to get my point across. And later for what you're saying or later for what you're thinking or how you feel it's about me. So
exactly.
Before I let you go, let the people know where they can connect with you, what you got coming up next.
Okay. I will say, thinking about what you were saying, I just want to bring it home. If you don't love you and tap into the core foundation of who you are, which is love, it will be nearly impossible to have effective communication. It will be nearly impossible to navigate through conflict. It will be nearly impossible to live a purposeful and fulfilled life without tapping into that core foundation of who you are, which is love. Because when you operate from a love foundation, you live through a love lens and you produce that. So even when the world throws other things at you, your counter will always be rooted in love. Couple of things we have coming up. We have an open mic in Apex, North Carolina, at the Mocha room. It's a dope little coffee shop in the Apex, North Carolina area.
Okay.
They're going to sponsor an open mic, and they said they wanted the proceeds to go to Love is a Parable. And I was like, oh, so we're going to go out there and support. Y'all know I love a good mic. Open mic night. We have a seminar coming up in April with the town of Holly Springs on value-based leadership. We're getting ready to gear up for our love advocacy. And the best way to stay connected is just to visit loveisaparable.com. And then you go to the bottom of the screen and you can follow, like, and subscribe to all our social media platforms. But we're everything Love is a Parable. That's LOVEISAPARBLE. Everything is Love is a Parable, no matter what the social media platform, but it's best to go to the website to stay connected and get engaged.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'll put the information in the show notes as well. Please connect with Love is a Parable. See what they have going on. They have a lot of great things going on. Brother, I just want to tell you that I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on.
Likewise, bro. I love you, man.
Hey, man, I love you too.
Tell Nikki I love her too, and I miss her. I ain't seen her nowhere. We didn't see her.
He said, I ain't seen her.
She said, I did that one show. That's all you getting out of me. One show. You better like these pictures. You better read this blog and like these pictures. That's all you getting.
I'll let her know. As always, man, it's been a great conversation. Thank you again, everybody. Make sure you connect with Love is a Parable. Subscribe so you can get a newsletter and connect with J Dwayne on all of social media platforms. And until next time, remember, keep pushing forward. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Brown Sugar Cafe podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Terrence P. Elmore, and this is the place where poetry meets conversation. Hit that follow button and turn on your notifications so you won't miss an episode. Check out my blog, thebrownsugarcafe.blog. Also connect with me on Instagram at thebrownsugarcafe. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and as always, remember, keep pushing forward.